The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergey Lavrov, indirectly hints us that the next target of Russia in this war can be the country of Moldova, which is located on the southwest of Ukraine. He made several provocative statements today, and in addition to that, some intelligence data suggests that it might happen. So, what did he even say? Why Russia might need to liberate Moldova? How is this connected to this war? And these are the questions that we'll be talking about in my today's video. What's up, investors and people of Reddit? It's the Russian Dude. This is your daily update on Russian-Ukrainian war as of Friday, April 29th. You can see the main events of the day to my right, along with the timestamps. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergey Lavrov, made several provocative statements today, including the involvement of the third country in this war, Moldova. And before we talk about Prидnestrovia region and Moldova, here are his other statements. First of all, he was speaking about this alleged rumor that Russia will try to end the war before May 9th. And his response was that the war will be over as soon as all the goals of Russia will be achieved. So as you can guess, no clear timelines and definitely no clear goals. His second statement was that he was blaming the United States of America and he was calling them hypocrites and dictators. The third statement is that Russia knows all these military convoys of NATO that bring weapons to Ukraine and that Russia considers these military convoys of NATO to be legitimate military targets. And then, so since we are speaking about NATO, he said that Russia does not consider that they're at war with NATO. Lavrov then added is that probably NATO thinks that they're at war with Russia. And yes, this was his statement right after he said that the military convoys of NATO are legitimate military targets for Russia. And finally, he made several statements about the country of Moldova, which is on the southwest of Ukraine. He said that they should not worry about this special military operation of Russia, and instead they should be worried that NATO is dragging them into this alliance. And I mean, just by saying this, he once again was indirectly threatening Moldova by saying that, okay, if you're gonna be joining NATO, we will have to liberate you, I guess. Because every single country that joins NATO becomes the slave of the alliance. Because just as a reminder, this is almost exactly how this war with Ukraine has started. Because one of the main reasons why Russia started this military operation against Ukraine, it is because Ukraine was intending to join NATO. So as you can see right now, there are no direct threats against Moldova, but to be honest, maybe we are going there. To support this unfortunate thought, there have been several reports of the intelligence that Russia is looking forward to liberate Pridnestrovia region. And here, by the way, is this Pridnestrovia region, which is highlighted in red on this map. As you can see, to the right of Pridnestrovia region is Ukraine, and to the left is Moldova and Romania. So the main reason why would Russia need this Pridnestrovia region, according to some military experts, it is because it gives convenient location for Russian forces. On the right you have southwest of Ukraine, and on the left you have Moldova and Romania, which basically gives you the access to entire Europe. So this is how they see it. But the way I see it is a little bit different. I see this Pridnestrovia region to be a small piece of land between Ukraine and basically the rest of Europe. And so in case eventually Russia indeed liberates this region and will occupy its territory, it will be basically surrounded by enemies. So basically, yes, at this very moment there are no direct and concrete statements, so everything that I'm saying is just an assumption. We will see together how the situation unveils itself in the nearest future, and I will keep you informed. And by the way, if you like this style of daily news reporting, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, please make sure to check the link in the description if you wish to support Ukraine with us. I will be donating all of my Patreon memberships at the end of each month to Ukraine, and I'll do it during my charitable live stream tomorrow, this Saturday, April 30th. The president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, officially recognized today that his country is a dictatorship. And these are his two exact quotes. First of all, he said, "Thanks God we have a dictatorship. You were always criticizing me, dictatorship, but at least now we have law and order during this dictatorship. If there will be no dictatorship in our country, you'll be all butt naked." So this was his first quote, and the second quote goes as following. Western countries do not allow their citizens to visit Belarus visa-free simply because they do not want their residents to see how good Belarus people live. Yes, These were the exact quotes. There have been several reports that now Russia wants to change political riddles of Ukraine and as well as to rewrite the constitution of the country, which once again shows us that the goals of this so-called special military operation by Russia are changing literally every single day. Because in the past Russians were saying that we recognize Zelensky as the main president of Ukraine and we're not gonna interfere with this. Besides obviously trying to take down all the political leaders of Ukraine, or I guess liberating them from their positions, Russia will be pushing its own infiltrators, which basically means in the slightest chance of success of this objective, Russia will try to put pro-Russian politicians on the government posts in Ukraine. Today, the Federal Security Service of Russia has released the secret documents which describe in details the suicide of Hitler. It talks about the last couple of weeks of the Second World War, which as we all know resulted in Nazistic leaders killing themselves. And just as a reminder, the killer of Adolf Hitler did his killings on April 30th, 1945, which means that tomorrow is going to be 77th anniversary of this event. And I don't know why would the Federal Security Service release this document so close to the anniversary of the event. Maybe they're just gonna say something, or maybe there's some kind of Easter eggs. Anyways, we're gonna see tomorrow if there's gonna be any riddles to solve. Yesterday, the United States of America approved its Lend-Lease program to Ukraine. And this is briefly what Lend-Lease means. Lend-Lease program allows to send weapons to a third country much faster, avoiding many bureaucratic barricades. In addition to that, the equipment can be leased instead of selling it. And both these things significantly reduce the time the country receives the weapons and the price that this country has to pay. So many people rightfully think that this might be a turning point in this war, because at this very moment Ukraine is accumulating offensive weapons which later, approximately in June-July, they will be using to launch counterattacks against Russians. And so the response of Russia for this Lend-Lease program was basically immediate. If Ukraine is going to receive so many new weapons, Russia must also find money to buy new weapons. With the only difference is that Russia planning to get this additional money by reducing the social payments to its citizens. So as a result, we have Ukraine, whose war is supported by many different countries financially. And on the other hand, we have Russia, which war is sponsored by the citizens of Russia. And I mean, Russia is already far from being somewhere close to the top to the average earnings per person. But in case this really happens, this will make the population of Russia even more poor. And so, how would you ask even more money from people who barely live from paycheck to paycheck? And the answer here is propaganda and patriotism. If you make it look like your money will go towards fighting your common enemy of the state, people will be more than willing to give their last money. And I mean, for some of you this might sound like something extreme, but believe me, this does happen in Russia. Last week there has been a survey among Russian people asking them whether they support this so-called special military operation. 1 month ago, March 22nd, approximately 53% of Russians said that they definitely support this operation, and only 6% said that they definitely do not support it. And so 1 month later, on April 22nd, the same survey has been made, and the new results are the following. 45% of Russians support this military operation, which is a decrease by 8%, and 11% absolutely do not support this operation, which is an increase by 5%. In the beginning of this week, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, was speaking with the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. The conversation, let's say so, was not so productive, because for every single blame that Antonio was saying to Vladimir Putin, Putin always had the reasoning. And obviously Putin's main reasoning was that they're liberating the Donbass region. So eventually, after the Secretary General spoke with the President of Russia, his next stop was to be in Ukraine. And ironically, just a couple of days after speaking with Vladimir Putin, who was ensuring that Russia does not ever bomb civilian buildings in Ukraine, the Secretary General of the United Nations have heard it himself how Russians were bombing Kiev, specifically this defense factory Artyom. But in addition to this factory, also one civilian building was also hit by missiles. And unfortunately, there is one casualty. And the person who died was Vera Giric, who was a civilian journalist for radio station Radio Freedom. This radio station is funded by the United States of America, therefore in Russia it is prohibited. And to be honest, it is pretty unfortunate and suspicious coincidence that the only civilian who died in this missile strike was the person who was speaking against Russia. Every single day Russia is preparing for its victory parade, which will happen May 9th. And for those of you who might not know, Russia celebrates this victory parade every single year since 1945. And the reason for the celebration is a victory over the Nazistic Germany. There also have been several rumors circulating the social medias that Putin will try to win somehow this war before May 9th. And the reason why would he want to do this is to present some kind of victory, so this parade is justified. And so every single year, Russia invites several different countries' representatives, with the only exception that this year no one is invited. And this includes even the so-called ally of Russia, Belarus, which means that this year's parade will only be available to be seen by Russians. But don't worry, I'm planning to live stream this victory parade, and I'll be collecting donations, which I'll be obviously sending to Ukraine. Which in my opinion, this is gonna be kinda ironic, because we're gonna be watching victory parade of Russia and using the money collected to support Ukraine. So basically, yeah, mark your calendars, May 9th, together we're gonna see this. One of the main propagandists media of Russia, which is called Riya News, released an article which says that Russians are forced to become rich. And I mean, every single person, whenever they heard the name of this article, they were rightfully, as I am, confused. Which basically means richer in what? In money, natural resources, or in morale? I guess whatever they were trying to say is that in case there is no international brands at all inside Russia, Russians will just not have to spend that much money. And if they're not gonna spend too much money, that's how they're gonna become rich. Once again, shows you just the level of journalism in Russia. Today, the evacuation of civilians from Azovstal factory, which is located in the city of Mariupol, has failed. Just a brief description of the problem: Mariupol is one of the most distracted cities at this very moment. And the only place which is still not occupied by Russian forces is the territory of this steel factory. Because of this, many civilians were trying to hide underground of this factory. And obviously, the main purpose of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine regarding this factory was to let civilians escape. So the reason of this failed evacuation was probably because the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine failed as well. So the Russian demands were the following: okay, we're gonna let all the civilians walk away, but all the Ukrainian soldiers who are currently on the territory of this factory must also put down their weapons and basically surrender. So for Ukrainians, these were kinda unacceptable terms, and I guess they didn't agree for this. Or maybe Russia knew it in the first place that by providing such unreasonable demands, Ukraine will just not follow along. And so yeah, basically the result of all this is that the evacuation at this very moment has not been started. The president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, says that the chances of successful negotiations between Russia and Ukraine are getting slimmer and slimmer every single day. On this map, you can see the current state of the war as of April 29th. There have not been significant advancements from both sides, except a couple of cases. First of all, Ukrainian forces were able to push away Russian forces north of Kharkov, which basically means that at this very moment, Ukrainian forces are getting pretty close to the borders with Russia. And the second advancement happened in the region of Kherson. Russian forces were able to advance west and got closer to the city of Mykolaiv. And by the way, if you want to see more details, feel free to pause the video. Here we have the brief summary of the data presented to us by the intelligence service of the United Kingdom. And I mean, if you are watching me on a regular basis, we already know this. Second is that the most combat action at this very moment is concentrated around that area. And the third is that one of the reasons why Russians are still being able to slowly advance, it is because there is so much forces in Russian army. Which brings us to the Second World War and the USSR strategy of this war, which basically means to just send as many soldiers to this war as possible. The convoy of Belarusian military vehicles were spotted getting closer to the borders with Poland. And most likely, the main reason why this is happening, it is because Poland announced its military training in May. Thank you so much for your attention, stay safe, and see you tomorrow during my live stream.